Hello to all Healthycoin enthusiasts and welcome to a new edition of Healthycoin TV. In the meantime, here's an official statement regarding the current regulatory developments in the USA and the strategic positioning of Healthycoin. The regulatory development in the area of digital assets in the United States is currently in a crucial phase. At the center is the so-called Digital Asset Market Clarity Act, a legislative initiative aimed at creating, for the first time, a clear, uniform, and legally binding framework for cryptocurrencies and digital assets. This law potentially marks a turning point for the entire U.S. crypto market, and thus also for internationally oriented projects like Healthycoin. First, regarding the current status of the Clarity Act. The Clarity Act was passed by a clear majority in the U.S. House of Representatives in July 2025. This marked the first significant hurdle the legislation has overcome. Since then, the draft has been in the further legislative process of the U.S. Senate. In the Senate, the bill is currently being discussed in the relevant committees, particularly in the Banking Committee and other relevant bodies. During this phase, detailed questions are being discussed, wording is being adjusted, and political compromises are being negotiated. Key points of the Clarity Act include the clear delineation of when a digital token is considered a security and when it is considered a digital commodity, the definition of decentralization criteria, as well as binding disclosure requirements, and the clear regulatory jurisdiction between the SEC and the CFTC. The goal is to end the existing uncertainty in the market, where projects often did not clearly know which regulatory framework applies to them. Why is the process currently delayed? Although there is generally bipartisan support for more regulatory clarity, the legislative process is complex. Discussions in the Senate involve, among other things, the role of stablecoins, interest models, and their classification, the distinction between banks and crypto companies, as well as issues of market oversight and consumer protection mechanisms. Such detailed questions naturally lead to political negotiations and delays. Industry analyses currently assume that a possible final vote in the Senate could take place no earlier than the second half of 2026. A more realistic time frame, depending on political compromises, appears to be between the end of 2026 and the beginning of 2027. Thus, the market is currently in a transitional phase. Legal clarity has been announced, but is not yet fully implemented. Let's discuss the significance of this development for the crypto market. The Clarity Act is more than just another piece of legislation. It represents a paradigm shift from regulatory uncertainty to institutional maturity, from enforcement actions after the fact and towards clear guidelines in advance. For serious, long-term oriented projects, this development is fundamentally positive. Legal certainty builds trust among users, partners, and institutional investors. At the same time, such a transitional phase means that projects must carefully consider when and under what conditions they officially launch. The current strategic classification for Healthycoin. Healthycoin is a usage-oriented Web3 project in the health and lifestyle sector. Our approach is based on real application, sustainable token structure, and long-term scalability. The token is functionally embedded in an ecosystem and is not primarily designed for short-term speculation. It is precisely this structure that makes a clear regulatory classification essential. An early official launch under still not fully clarified legal frameworks would create unnecessary risks. These include possible later reclassifications, retroactive adjustment obligations, regulatory uncertainties for partners, and restrictions on listings or collaborations. For this reason, we have consciously opted for a strategically planned, regulation-based market entry. This decision is not a sign of hesitation, but an expression of responsibility. What is currently happening behind the scenes with us? Healthycoin is not at a standstill. On the contrary, the current phase is being used for fine-tuning the token architecture, aligning with expected decentralization criteria, preparing regulatory documentation, building institutional connectivity, and implementing technical scaling and infrastructure measures. Our goal is to enter the market with a clean, robust structure after clear legal frameworks come into effect, without later adjustment pressures or regulatory legacies. Our realistic expectations. As of now, unfortunately, a short-term, immediate passage of the Clarity Act cannot be expected. Political processes take time, especially with complex financial and market legislation. A realistic target range for final passage lies between the end of 2026 and the beginning of 2027, provided there is an agreement in the Senate. Healthycoin aligns its strategic planning with this realistic timeline. A final assessment and conclusion on Healthycoin. The regulatory change in the USA is not a risk. It is a structural opportunity. It separates short-term projects from long-term viable models. It rewards strategic planning instead of hasty market launches. It builds trust through clarity. Healthycoin is consciously positioning itself in this new phase of the market. We do not wait out of uncertainty. We prepare out of conviction. Our focus is on legal certainty, institutional connectivity, sustainable value creation, and long-term scalability. Healthycoin is not aimed at the next market cycle. Healthycoin is aimed at structural stability. We thank you for your trust and patience. The next steps will be taken with care, clarity, and strategic foresight. So be sure to subscribe to our channel to stay up to date. See you!